it's a very important update in terms of what this really means for the markets, a bunch of these sectors as well. But before that, let's look back at the last 8 days and get in Meera Shankar, diplomat and former Indian ambassador, to join us. There's a clear escalation, first of all. And, a very good afternoon to you. I wanted to try and understand what you really think about this clear escalation, because you're looking at a daylight attack, right? And this is something that's really rattled areas over the last few days beyond the borders of the countries directly involved. So what's your read on what has really transpired in the last 8 days?
Look, I think the American and Israeli expectation was perhaps a miscalculation that if they take out the top leadership, there will be regime change, because President Trump called on the Iranian people to rise and take back their country, saying this was their opportunity. But the people who came out on the streets were really those mourning the death of Supreme Leader Khamenei. So a political miscalculation in terms of the ease with which the US and Israel thought they could achieve their objective. So now they are having to expand the war, and it can create problems also for President Trump's own political base, because he had come on the mandate of ending wars and avoiding foreign entanglements, which MAGA felt was bleeding the country and had led to its economy facing consequences in terms of a deficit and so on. So it's directly contrary to the political mandate with which he had come. But now what has happened is there's you get sucked in. And for Iran, they have shown resolve in terms of, not caving in or accepting diplomatic feelers, which was sent out apparently by the Americans. This is what the Iranians claim. We don't really know. And their strategy is to expand the theater of war to the neighboring Gulf kingdoms who host or which host American bases and facilities. So they have been attacking American facilities in the Gulf countries and in Saudi Arabia, apart from attacking US and Israeli assets. And they have closed the Straits of Hormuz. So in a sense, this expands the theater of war, and the impact of the higher oil prices will not be felt so much by America.
Right. Ma'am, I actually also wanted to try and get a better sense of what you think about the commentary also that picking up from what you just said in terms of expanding the theater of war, right? When you talk about a major player in this entire theater, when you talk about Donald Trump's comments, you do have him started by saying that it's a devious country. That was 8 days ago. He said that this is a preemptive strike. He said that, okay, this is the entire reason why. There was an 8-minute speech that he gave where he details, bit by bit, layer by layer, that this is a very preemptive strike that you're looking at. Cut to 8 days later, right now, you do have him saying something on the lines of that they don't want a deal. There's only unconditional surrender, and that's the only thing that can solve this conflict. He's also saying that he's going to be making Iran great again. So there's a bunch of barrage of commentary that you've had come in from Donald Trump. That entire backdrop, how are you looking at? I understand that you're calling it a miscalculation, but I also want to try and get a better sense of what you think about his comments, because that entire commentary has also clearly evolved.
Well, clearly now the US is looking at expanding, at expanding its role, because it has deployed much heavier weapons and basically, B-52 bombers, arranged mid-air refueling and so on. So clearly the US is also ramping up its military action in Iran in response, I think, to the Iranian retaliation. And we have to wait and see where it goes, because it's a difficult question, because there's a huge military asymmetry between the US and Israel on one hand and Iran on the other. And on the other hand, there's Iranian nationalism, which feels, that their sovereignty has been violated and that they will endure. So we really don't know where this is going to end and how it's going to end. But clearly, from India's point of view, we believe that diplomacy and dialogue will help to take this forward because there was a discussion going on Iran's nuclear issue in Geneva, and the Omani's foreign minister, who was the go-between and the mediator, came out of those talks and said great progress had been made
Right, no,
because
absolutely.
Iran had agreed to give up, to dismantle its enriched uranium stockpile. It had agreed not to stockpile enriched uranium in future. It was willing to give a commitment that it would not now or into the future seek a nuclear weapon.
Right,
The
no,
one issue,
right.
1 minute, one issue on which there was disagreement was Iran's insistence that they should retain the right to enrich uranium in principle up to thresholds which are permitted by the IAEA for non nuclear weapon states under inspection and safeguards, and the US insistence that no, Iran cannot retain the right to enrich uranium on its soil. But this could have been discussed and addressed. So the attacks came even as negotiations were going on, which would also
Right.
make the Iranians a bit wary of now looking at negotiations because they feel that they were done in bad faith.
Right, no, absolutely. And it does look like Iran was a little bit blindsided by the way that it really unfolded, because you did have, like you pointed out, that entire bit of positive commentary also pouring in from those negotiations, something that the entire region was really looking at with bated breath. But another thing that I wanted to get a sense of in terms of diplomacy and the way that it's going to be shaping, and also on the roadmap that it's going to be shaping out in the entire Gulf region, how are you looking at the way that this is going to evolve from here on? Do you think that the region was, in fact, ready for an event like this? Iran has been talking about how they're preparing for US, to be striking, or, they're well prepared in terms of the kind of military preparations. But when you talk about the entire diplomatic channel when it comes to Gulf countries, how are you reading that as well right now?
Look, Iran had said right in the beginning publicly that if the US and Israel attack Iran, Iran will attack the country, the bases of the US in the neighboring countries. And they had said this publicly and conveyed it to the countries in the region in the hope that they would be able to exert pressure to stave off military action because when US and Israel had bombed the Iranian nuclear sites earlier, uh, Israel at that time was wanting to go ahead with plans to assassinate Khamenei because they
Right.
said they had information and could track him. And Trump at that stage had pulled them back, had held them back, and pushed for a ceasefire. So this is something the Israelis have been pushing
Yeah.
for some time because they feel that they have pacified the rest of the region. And if somehow they can get a friendly regime in Iran, then their dominance of the region
Right.
is complete. But till now, America has been reluctant to be led along this path. But we've
Right.
seen this whole thing because President Trump was trying to get Iran to capitulate in the nuclear talks under military pressure. So there was
Right.
huge mobilization of US forces in the region, leading to
Right.
the possibility of US military action. And since
Absolutely.
last
Right.
year, Khamenei has been actually almost prepared for this, for
An
a
escalation, in
succession
fact.
plan
Right.
and so on.